In a heartbeat, my world was shattered when my husband's voice, cold and harsh, blared through the phone. "Why do you always fall apart when I need you?" he scolded, seemingly blind to the urgency that had sent me rushing to the hospital, with our unborn child's safety hanging in the balance. "We're starving here, waiting for your awful cooking, while you're off lounging in the hospital," he went on, his tone completely devoid of empathy. He announced he'd had enough and was going out to eat with his parents, leaving me to find my own way home. His frustration pierced through the phone, blaming me for a crisis I had no control over, and only deepening my fear and worry for our unborn child, whom I was desperately trying to protect. I was once a dedicated cosmetic salesperson, known for my passion and commitment, with a collection of awards and a stellar reputation to prove it. My job fueled my confidence and was a source of immense pride. Meeting my husband felt like a fairy tale come true, leading to a whirlwind romance and marriage. However, the joy of discovering I was pregnant brought a difficult decision: leaving my job to reduce the risk of miscarriage, a choice I made for the sake of our family's future. As I faced the challenges of pregnancy, my husband's support began to dwindle. What had started as shared excitement soon turned into frustration. Simple tasks that once seemed easy now felt monumental, and my efforts to meet his expectations often fell short. "Where's my lunch?" he would ask, only to dismiss the simple sandwiches I managed to make, criticizing my sensitivity to smells. His words were cutting. Pregnancy is not an illness, belittling my struggles and leaving me to fend for myself. This change in his behavior was a stark contrast to the man I had fallen in love with. His presence at doctor's appointments dwindled, and his empathy for the household chores, which now felt overwhelming to me, seemed to vanish. Our home, once a sanctuary of mutual respect and love, was increasingly feeling like a battleground. I was left trying to protect not only my own well-being but also the health of our unborn child, desperately hoping that we might find our way back to understanding and support. Maybe he's just worn out, I told myself. He had recently taken on a mentorship role for a new colleague, which had been quite demanding. This could be why he seemed more impatient and irritable with me lately. I reassured myself that once our baby arrived, his busy schedule would settle, and we'd find our groove as a family. "It's going to be all right," I murmured, gently stroking my growing belly, clinging to hope despite the challenges of my changing body and the strain in our relationship. Unfortunately, things between my husband and me haven't improved. To make matters worse, my in-laws have begun dropping by unannounced, heightening my stress levels. They've scrutinized the cleanliness of our home and voiced concerns about how we'd cope once the baby arrived. Despite their criticisms, they expected immediate hospitality and demanded I whip up something for them on the spot. Caught off guard and unprepared, I felt overwhelmed and judged for not being a better host. Each visit ended with their disappointment, and my husband consistently sided with them, never defending me. Despite my best efforts, I felt perpetually inadequate in their eyes. During one of these visits, I was sent out to buy groceries despite being heavily pregnant. The strain proved too much, and I collapsed. When I woke up in the hospital, I learned that I had fainted from overexertion, but thankfully, our baby was still safe. The doctors advised a few days of rest in the hospital. I saw missed calls from my husband on my phone and realized he must have been worried when I didn't return from the store. However, when I finally called him back, hoping to hear concern or relief in his voice, I was met with anger. "Where have you been?" he demanded, his tone harsh and unforgiving, as if my health and our baby's safety were insignificant. His words left me shivering, feeling both hurt and abandoned. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to explain. "I collapsed at the grocery store and was taken to the hospital. They have me on IV fluids and want me to stay here for a few days for observation." But his response was cold and dismissive, as if my well-being was secondary to his own inconvenience. "You collapse, and I'm supposed to care. Why don't you answer my calls? You're so slow." His harsh words stung, and I dreaded the thought of our unborn child being exposed to such negativity. "Please stop yelling. It's not good for the baby," I pleaded, but my request for compassion fell on deaf ears. He remained unrelenting, indifferent to my plea for kindness. "We're starving here, waiting for your terrible cooking, and you're just lounging in the hospital," he said, his voice dripping with anger and lacking any trace of concern. His clear intention to go out with his parents and leave me to manage on my own, despite my condition, was crushing. His harsh words made me flinch, and not wanting to expose my baby to any more negativity, I ended the call, feeling profoundly alone and disheartened. As I returned to my hospital room, tears began to flow uncontrollably. In that vulnerable moment, a comforting voice reached out to me. Are you okay? I looked up to see Helen, a customer I had grown close to during my time as a cosmetics salesperson, offering me a towel. Recognizing her immediately, a wave of relief and warmth washed over me. Helen, is it really you? I'm so glad you remember me, she said with a warm smile. Our unexpected reunion felt like a twist of fate, a much-needed reminder of kindness and human connection during my darkest hour. Helen had been more than just a customer. After a painful divorce, she had lost her self-confidence and stopped wearing makeup altogether. I vividly recalled the day I approached her at the cosmetics counter, offering to help her try some new products. The transformation in her appearance was more than just physical. It marked a moment of emotional healing and a step towards regaining her self-esteem. Over time, Helen became more than a client. She became a friend. But 5 years before I left my job, she had suddenly stopped coming, and I had always wondered what had happened to her. Now, here she was, a beacon of support at a time when I needed it most. I had come back hoping to reconnect with you, Helen, she said, her voice tinged with surprise and disappointment. When I visited your old workplace, I was taken aback to learn that you had left. I'm sorry for dropping in so unexpectedly, Helen explained with a chuckle. I've been working abroad, running a business, and it's been incredibly busy. It's been ages since I've had the chance to enjoy America and its cuisine, so I decided to come back once things calmed down a bit. And of course, right after I tried to find you, I ended up here with appendicitis. Her laughter brought a sense of lightness to the situation despite the circumstances. It's only in the early stages, so medication should sort it out. And honestly, if this had happened while I was still abroad, the treatment costs would have been sky high. In a way, I'm relieved it happened here, Helen continued, her optimism and familiar smile proving as infectious as ever. This unexpected reunion lifted my spirits, and we began to joyfully reminisce about the past. As our conversation grew more heartfelt, Helen, with her ever-kind smile, gently inquired, You don't have to share if you're not comfortable, but I noticed you seemed upset earlier. Is everything all right? Feeling a deep trust in Helen, not just as a former customer but as a true friend, I felt compelled to open up. I opened up to Helen about the difficulties I was facing with my husband and in-laws. I'm really concerned about bringing my child into this environment, I admitted. I'm afraid they'll face the same treatment I do. And now, without my job, the thought of living independently, especially with a child, feels overwhelming. To my surprise, Helen made an incredibly generous offer. I actually have an apartment that you could use. I manage a few properties as part of a project I developed on some inherited land. It's a cozy 2-bedroom with a separate bathroom, soundproof walls, and it's in a safe neighborhood close to supermarkets and a police station. There's no need for a deposit at the moment, and you can start paying rent whenever you're ready. It's a really good deal. What do you think? Helen's enthusiasm was unmistakable, and her offer was so genuine it made me laugh in disbelief. Are you sure you can offer it at such favorable terms? I asked, deeply moved by her kindness. Absolutely, Helen replied with a warm smile. I trust you to take great care of the place, and I think it's crucial to support each other during tough times. You're more than welcome to stay there, she assured me, her generosity evident. Helen's unexpected kindness was a beacon of hope, providing not just a place to stay but a chance for a fresh start. Eager to support someone she valued, Helen offered her apartment, an act of generosity I couldn't turn down. With heartfelt gratitude, I accepted her offer. Days later, after receiving the doctor's approval, I left the hospital and moved straight into the apartment Helen had prepared for me. Her remarkable generosity was evident in how effortlessly she had arranged everything over the phone. I didn't go back to the home I had shared with my husband. Instead, I embraced this fresh start in Helen's warm and cozy apartment. Despite feeling guilty for not paying rent immediately, Helen reassured me with a laugh, insisting there was no rush. While my husband was at work, I quietly returned to our old home to gather my belongings, only to realize how little there truly felt like mine. The house seemed as empty as the ache in my heart within its walls. Helen's support extended beyond the apartment. She introduced me to a lawyer who had previously assisted her, reinforcing my decision to pursue a divorce. The lawyer's encouragement became a beacon of hope, and as each hospital visit confirmed the health of my growing baby, my resolve only grew stronger. During one such visit, as I stepped outside, my heart sank when I saw my husband waiting for me. Panic surged through me, and despite my best efforts to flee, my pregnancy slowed me down. He confronted me about the lawyer and our new living situation, gripping my arm tightly. I stood my ground, insisting that any discussions about the divorce, compensation, or child support be handled through the lawyer. His demands for me to return and his refusal to provide support were met with my firm refusal. As my husband tried to drag me back, a young woman intervened. Her name was Rebecca, and she was clearly familiar with my husband. Stepping in front of me with a protective stance, Rebecca's presence shifted the dynamic of the confrontation. The tension between her and my husband was palpable, but Rebecca stood firm, refusing to let him take me against my will. Her resolve, coupled with the implied threat of calling the police, gave me a glimmer of hope and the courage to assert myself in the face of this unexpected conflict. When my husband heard the mention of the police, he looked alarmed and quickly left. I felt an overwhelming sense of relief that made my legs go weak. Rebecca quickly moved to my side, offering support. "Are you okay?" she asked gently as I apologized, expressing how grateful I was for her help. Without hesitation, Rebecca called a taxi for me, insisting on ensuring I got home safely. Despite feeling guilty for causing her trouble, she reassured me it was no bother. When I shared my address, Rebecca was surprised to discover that I lived just below her. It was a happy coincidence that we were neighbors. Rebecca, with her cheerful and caring demeanor, turned out to be a new employee at my husband George's workplace. She had reported George's inappropriate behavior, which led to his removal as her mentor. George was notorious for his lack of empathy towards female employees, often making insensitive remarks about personal matters like menstruation and marriage. Rebecca's experiences echoed my own, highlighting the troubling behavior I had endured from him during my pregnancy. 3 weeks after our meeting, Rebecca and I had become good friends, enjoying dinners together and sharing our lives. She informed me that George had been transferred to a subsidiary company following numerous complaints and issues at work. It turned out that Rebecca was the daughter of Helen, the successful businesswoman who managed several properties, including the apartment I was staying in. George had previously boasted about handling Helen's account, but his behavior ultimately led to a reassessment of his professional standing. Helen had advocated for George's transfer after uncovering his misconduct both at work and towards me. Rebecca, resourceful and determined, had tackled workplace issues independently without leaning on her mother's influence. However, upon discovering my connection to Helen, she felt a stronger sense of duty to act. Helen encouraged Rebecca to compile all evidence against George, which contributed to his transfer. With George now facing reduced income and an increased workload, his situation had markedly changed. Helen's advice to me, drawing on her extensive experience, was to remain resolute and not be swayed by any attempts George might make to elicit sympathy. Her guidance was a source of great reassurance, coming from someone with such expertise and understanding. After deciding to divorce George, he attempted to reach out through our lawyer, expressing how challenging work had been and how much he missed me. He even apologized and pleaded for a chance to reconcile, but I remained resolute in my decision to proceed with the divorce. Supported by Helen, George ultimately had no choice but to accept the divorce terms and agree to pay child support and damages over time. My next significant hurdle was dealing with my in-laws, particularly my father-in-law, who was overly eager about the baby being a boy. I could sense trouble brewing, and my concerns were soon validated. One day, as I was about to leave, my father-in-law grabbed my arm. Having followed Rebecca in an attempt to confront her, he instead found me. He demanded that I surrender the baby once born, insisting that the child was the family's heir. Despite my efforts to escape, his grip was firm and unyielding. Just then, a commanding voice cut through the tension, demanding my father-in-law release me. Before I could react, Rebecca executed a precise judo move, sending him sprawling to the ground. It turned out that Rebecca, a top-ranked judoka with national titles, had mastered judo to protect herself and her mother during challenging times. She confronted my father-in-law, condemning him for ignoring George's behavior and trying to interfere in my life. Rebecca firmly defended my right to move forward, making it clear that any interference was unacceptable. As the sound of approaching sirens grew louder, I realized Rebecca had called for help before stepping in to rescue me. My mother-in-law, who had been waiting nearby in the car, observed silently as the police arrived and took both her and my father-in-law into custody. In the aftermath, my father-in-law was arrested, and after some reflection, my mother-in-law chose to divorce him. She decided to start anew, moving back to the countryside to live a life free from external pressures. Despite George's pleas to accompany her, expressing his frustration with his job and the legal battles, she firmly refused, prioritizing her own fresh start over his desires. Through the lawyer, my mother-in-law reached out to offer her apologies and left a sum of money as a gesture of goodwill. Helen explained that it's not uncommon for people to feel loss after a divorce, and the money was likely her mother-in-law's way of apologizing and supporting my son's future. Although her past behavior had been troubling, I was touched by her effort to make amends and appreciated the support. Following the finalization of the divorce, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. My mother-in-law chose to settle in the countryside, preferring a life of solitude over remaining with George. When my father-in-law was eventually released, he found that the house had been demolished by my mother-in-law before her departure. Left with few options, he moved in with George, which only added to their difficulties and contributed to George's resignation from his job due to his tarnished reputation. Despite the challenges, the child support payments continued to arrive reliably, likely managed by Helen and the lawyer. Rebecca, recognized for her hard work, advanced to a project leader role, earning admiration from her colleagues. Helen's ventures, including women-only properties and housing for foreigners, were thriving. As for me, once my son grew a bit older, I planned to return to work. Helen had offered me a position at a new high-end cosmetics store she was opening. Helen remained a steadfast supporter, showering my son with affection as if he were her own grandchild. Rebecca also made time to visit us, her presence a comforting reminder of the strength and kindness that had carried me through the toughest times. Inspired by these remarkable women, I was determined to be equally strong and protective of my son, embracing the support and resilience they have shown me.